Last weekend, I bought the Tascam Model 12, whatever you want to call it. It does a lot of things. I bought it because I do DAWless recording, and this seemed like the perfect combination of my favorite digital multi-tracker features with some of the physical knobs and extra connectivity that I'm used to from having some experience with old Tascam 424 Portastudios. In my last video, I talked a little bit about how I have progressed through a few devices to arrive at this one, but in that video, this one was still in its box. Today, I found myself with a weird block of daytime free time, so I decided to open up the Model 12. Oh yes, and give it a test run. Rather than mess around with inconsequential testing, I thought that I would try to put this device through its paces. I had a song that I finished somewhat recently and made a video about on this channel. Oh, friends, beaten in the sand. The song feels fresh, and I know it pretty well, but I hadn't yet recorded it, so I decided to try to record it today, and I finished it. In this video, I'm going to explain to you what I did in order to record a song in a day and use that as a basis for telling you some things that I have been able to observe thus far about the Tascam Model 12. Before I could do any recording, I had to do some basic setup with the Model 12, and that proved honestly slightly more difficult than I was expecting. I had an SD card cleared out and ready to go, so I put that in. I turned the thing on. I was sort of familiar with what most of the knobs were supposed to do, but I couldn't figure out how to monitor what I was doing or really hear anything through headphones. In both the digital Portastudios that I've used in the past and in the old 424, there's just like a jack for headphones, and it's pretty obvious how you're supposed to make sound emerge from those headphones. It was not at all obvious on the Model 12. Fortunately, once you know how to set up a headphone situation, it's not that difficult, but it's not necessarily intuitive. I'm going to put a link up here to a video from the classic DAWless recording channel, 424 Recording, that gives you an overview of how he connected headphones to his Model 12. I did the exact same thing. I used the sub outputs, and then I've got, incidentally, the exact same headphone amplifier that he shows in that video. So just watch that. He'll do a better job of explaining it than I ever could. Once I actually could hear sounds coming out of the device, I set about actually recording something. The first thing that I recorded to track number 1 was a combination of vocals and acoustic guitar. A warm glove covers my right hand. I recorded them with one microphone. It was a realistic, aka Radio Shack, PZM microphone. That type of microphone is omnidirectional and designed to pick up everything in the surrounding space. I was excited to have a lot of the room sound, and that is precisely what I got. When you listen to the final track at the end of this video, you're going to hear a lot of hiss, and I'm just going to tell you now that that all came from that very first track that I recorded, but I don't care. It's there, and it doesn't really interfere that much with my enjoyment of what I recorded, so I turned down the treble a little bit to make it slightly less noticeable, and then I left it. Then I moved on to track 2, which was another acoustic guitar, but mic'd differently. I used an SM57, pointed it right at the 12th fret, and played much more simple and sparse parts. Next, I moved on to more guitar, and this time it was electric guitar. I played a Les Paul style guitar that I have into a little honeytone, like belt clip amplifier, pointed that amplifier and the side of my ass at that SM57, and played mostly some accent parts, but then cobbled together some kind of guitar solo. There's a part of me that feels like I should re-record the solo, but I'm not gonna. By the way, in the mixing stage, when I wanted the solo to pop a little bit to move to the front of the mix, all I did is boost it a little bit in like the upper mids. This is a nice little way of providing a solo boost without having to boost the entire level of the entire track. By this point, I knew I had enough strings plinking around in the recording. I needed something to help reinforce the rhythm. I was inside my house, so I walked into the kitchen and looked in the pantry for things that made a shake sound, and I found From there, I moved on to background vocals. I at first tried to echo some of the lyrics and melodies that were sung by the lead vocal, but didn't feel like that worked out too well, so I just settled on doing some very simple "oh." And then I thought it would be fun to double track that part and pan it pretty hard left and right so that it created a wider sort of stereo pad feeling. That's what I did on tracks 5 and 6. And then on track 7/8, I recorded a bass guitar. I forgot to take any footage of recording that bass guitar, but I promise I did it. You'll hear it in the final track. Note that even though this is a stereo track, you don't have to use it for a stereo sound. If you just plug in a mono signal, you will just get a mono track, and that's what I did, and it seems to work fine. At that point, I took a brief break from recording to consider what I had recorded thus far and what I needed to do next. That seems like a good opportunity for me to say that the Model 12 works exactly the way that I want it to in doing this basic recording. A part of me misses the ability to plug a microphone into one input and then bust that input all over the place like you can on an old 424 cassette multi-tracker, but it's really not that hard to move it from input to input. When I set aside that minor gripe, everything else about recording with this device was extraordinarily smooth, and I was ready to do more of that recording. I knew that I wanted to record a cajon part, and then I needed to record some sort of trebly percussive part, and that's 2 parts, and I had 1/2 tracks left open on the Model 12. Track 9/10 is a stereo track, but you can't record, or at least I can't record, cajon and like hi-hat or tambourine at the same time. I knew that I needed to do some kind of bouncing in order to free up tracks for that further recording. Fortunately, you can do bouncing in this device, though they don't call it bouncing in the manual. If you hit record over here without any of the record buttons activated and blinking at you, it records to what you might really think of as track 11/12. It's a stereo track that's hiding over here under the main fader. As far as I can tell, the only thing that you record to that track is mix downs of other things that you've recorded. And then you could take whatever that is and either like export it to a .wav file and move it to your computer, or you can then swap with an available track or even a track that's not available that's in sort of the main 10 tracks. And then it sort of lives in that space as a bounced track. So I took the hard panned background vocals, since they were basically identical and at similar spaces and volumes, I bounced them exclusively over to this main channel and then swapped them so they were on track 9/10 in stereo, and it allowed me to delete what I had recorded to tracks 5 and 6, giving me exactly the amount of space that I thought I was going to need for cajon and trebly percussion. And that's sort of when I ran out of time and needed to return to my regular life, but I came out here in the shed after my kids had gone to sleep to continue the project. First, I sat down to record cajon, and with just an SM57, I was not really that happy with the sound that I was getting. So I used the DI output. I think it's from a piezo, or I honestly don't know how to say the name of those pickups. There's one of those inside of my cajon. So I recorded both a DI signal from that internal pickup and the SM57 onto those 2 available tracks, and then mixed them together to taste and performed another summing, mix down, or whatever using the mains function, and then flipped that combined cajon sound back onto only track 5, which left me with track 6 available for more recording. And this is where I had decisions to make. What was I going to do to add an obnoxious, high, metallic sound to the percussive parts of this song? And I decided for the first time ever to break out this hi-hat. I know basically nothing about how to record a hi-hat. I know only a little bit more about how to play a hi-hat, but I guess I have enough at my disposal to have played it and recorded it onto track 6. And at that point, my available tracks were full once again, and I considered the project done. I listened back, did a little bit of mixing with the faders and the EQ. So nice to have those controls at my fingertips. Speaking of features available at your fingertips, I also played around with the compressors that are available for each individual track. Overall, I had good experiences. I had some tracks where I wanted to apply only very modest compression, like that core track of vocals and acoustic, and I thought that the built-in compression worked totally fine for that application. There were other contexts like the hi-hat track, and this didn't really seem to do the job. It's only got one knob, there's not a whole lot that you can actually adjust about it. But if I cranked it, it just made it very bad sounding. It's not the sound that I wanted to hear. So I'll have to use like an outboard compressor if I want to apply that kind of compression on a signal in the future. But for most applications, like just to soften some of the spikes in that live performance that's the heart of this track, I thought it worked really well. And then after twiddling those and the other knobs, I made a mix that sounded good to me, and then printed it. The same process that you would use to do a bounce, except it was all of the things that I had recorded and was mixing together. And then I did actually export that to WAV so that it could be sent to a computer for sharing with you here. But before that, I guess I should say that after a day of recording, I am extremely happy with the Model 12. Once I worked out how to actually hear what was happening inside of it with my headphones, it was extraordinarily easy for me to use, and I had almost no hiccups along the way to recording 10 independent tracks and performing 2 what I think of as bounces and 1 final mixdown. It was really easy for me to get into the flow of using this, and I didn't feel like there was almost any learning curve whatsoever. But if you're used to using another brand of device or another kind of device or an audio interface and a DAW, this might be a little bit more intimidating and have a slightly steeper learning curve. Maybe I'll encounter higher hurdles as I try to use the remainder of the features in this device that I just didn't have an opportunity or need to touch today. And if that does happen, I'll make a video about it so that I can share that information with you. For now, I hope that you enjoyed and learned something from what I have shared today. Thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate you. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you enjoy the results of this recording project. It's a song called Bronco. It had a different name in an earlier video when I previewed it, but I significantly rewrote the lyrics, and I actually have been meaning to make a video about lyric rewriting using that song's lyrics as an example. If you're interested in seeing a video like that, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'm probably just going to move on with playing with the Model 12. Anyways, thank you so much again. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you around. Okay.
My right hand, clowns in the ring and more in the stands, buckets of beer and wandering eyes. I gotta hold on tight. The sand shifts under every step, and bruised ribs punish every breath. The stall shakes, you're restless inside. I've gotta hold on tight. My legs must be anchored, my hands like a cage. 'Cause I know there are riders that you don't try to escape. Your legs tense that I know won't last. You're trying to buck me night after night. I've gotta hold on tight. Hold tight. Hold tight. Hold tight. Hold tight. Hold tight. Baby, hold tight. Hold tight. Hold tight. I'm hold tight. I hold tight. I hold tight.
All right.